Okay, so welcome everyone. It's to the NPO Group's 4th annual meeting. It's been 4 years of having an annual meeting, but I was looking back today and I'd say the NPO Group has been in existence with the South Shore Chamber for 7 to 8 years, I would say. So this is pretty exciting to just be already in 4 years of having like an annual meeting, be structured and have the consistency there. So my name is Julie Williams and I'm the Director of Membership for the Chamber. I am also the liaison for the NPO Group, the rep on that from the Chamber, also help co-lead it. So I've spoken or have met most of you on this. I do want to call out, I think we have a couple of new members who have joined us, and that I see we have Paul Key, who is not an unfamiliar face. We know you through your prior role at Massasoit, but you're now with My Brother's Keeper. And we have Old Colony Elder Services, who has recently joined as well, so welcome. The time, we have this from 11 to 12:15, a little bit of an odd end time, but we're hoping right around the noon time we can kind of break off from the agenda and do a little bit of open networking. Since this is a pretty large group, I invite you for now to include in the chat function, if you'd like, your name, your organization, contact information, because what I can do is then share that the transcript from the Zoom chat in an email recap to you all. So if you'd like to do that, feel free to do that as I'm talking. Let's see. So like I said, we're going to try to do some networking, but we definitely want this to be interactive when we get into like the open discussion on our topic today, which for this annual meeting, it's about nonprofit management during COVID-19. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over and I'd like to introduce our co-chair, our chair, sorry, Lori, our chair of the NPO Group for a second consecutive year, Lori Meridian. She is the Director of Development for the Cardinal Cushing Centers. And we're delighted. I know personally, I'm very happy to have Lori agree to stay on a second year, because with her leadership getting us through 2020 and certainly having accomplishments, but having that consistency into this year is certainly key. So I'm really delighted to have her stay on board with us. So Lori's going to share with you some reflection of 2020 and kind of hint out what we're thinking, where we're going for 2021.
Great, thank you, Julie. It's great to be with you all this afternoon and see all of you on our Brady Bunch squares. You look fabulous. As I was thinking back to prepare for today, 2020 was such an incredibly challenging year. And then I think back to March and conversations we were having as part of this group or within, my own office. And to think that we were actually talking back then that we might be able to get together in person for April or May events really gives me some perspective on just how much our worlds have changed since then. And, I know this group, I know we're all planners, and, we have to be in order to do our jobs well in our industry. But we're also adaptable and flexible planners who are able to work really well creatively with limited resources. And as Julie said earlier, we go with the flow. So who knew that careers in nonprofits and nonprofit management would actually help prepare us pretty well to work in a pandemic? Now, all kidding aside, nothing could fully prepare us for the ways that everything sort of changed for all of us in 2020. And for some of those really hard, really tough times, some of them were really heartbreaking for many people. And that's one of the many reasons why I'm so grateful for this group. We were able to figure out how to work together in our new and virtual world and support each other as we tried to work through some challenges and changes, whether it be here or within our jobs or at home. Remember Deb Coulter, her expertise in using Facebook to fundraise was never as important or as sort of relevant as when we all started to have to stop having events. So we were so grateful to her for sharing that information with us and giving us some advice. And then over the summer, once it kind of became clear, oh no, you really all should figure out how to do a virtual event. You should really embrace it, whether it's going to be in 2020 or 2021. We were able to turn to our partners with the Massachusetts Nonprofit Network and learn from them on how we can, have some success with that and get some best tips and practices. And amongst these and the other education programs that we have, we made time to get together on Zoom and just communicate or do our temperature checks, as we like to call them. And I feel like during those conversations, we really did learn a lot from one another. And just perhaps most importantly, we were able to remember that we're not alone in any of this and that we're all going through very similar things, similar themes, and we're here to help each other. And not just with each other, but we actually have access to the entire South Shore Chamber in their community of resources to help us get through this. Now, as we move forward, 2021 is probably still going to be a year of challenge and change. I think we've all figured that out at this point. There was no magic wand that changed on January 1st, 2021. So when we do get to the discussion part of today's program, definitely want to unpack that a little bit more and hear from you about how we continue to be a resource as we all move forward. And what are some of the challenges and changes that you're expecting or facing as we carry on? But before we do that, I would like to introduce a man who probably does not need an introduction, Peter Foreman, our President and CEO of the South Shore Chamber. I think you're on mute, Peter. There we go.
Great. So thank you for continuing your chairmanship. We've done the same thing at the Chamber with our board. Renee is now serving her second year. It's the first time we've had a chair go 2 years. And it sort of speaks to the dynamic of the pandemic that most organizations, including nonprofits, are facing. In one sense, it's a year of pause and just sort of hold everything in place, and in another, it's rapid movement. I think 21 and 22 are going to be even more challenging and in some ways exciting for our members, both the profit and nonprofit world. For many of our organizations, those that have survived have figured out new ways to adapt, but the uptick on the recovery could be even more interesting and challenging. So if you think of a typical recession as a big dip, we ride the roller coaster down, we ride the roller coaster up. But I think with the pandemic changes, it's now being the whipsawed around the curves as we figure out what recovery looks like. And that's going to create a lot of interesting opportunities. I think for the suburban market, that's going to be even more interesting for a number of reasons. It'll be interesting with transportation challenges for our residents. It's going to be interesting with job creation, placemaking, and what happens to our community centers and main streets. And there's a lot of work to be done, and a lot of people are looking at this. At our end, beyond doing a lot of member services, trying to help people navigate through COVID and all of the regulations and programs and changes, we are looking ahead to what recovery might mean in the suburban market. Our 2030 plan, we think, is even more relevant on the recovery than it was even prior to the pandemic. And as most of you know, that's really a plan about people in place, and having strong workforce and interesting place will help drive economic opportunity in the region. You've I'm sure all heard the housing program. We've been working now on we have something in place looking at water and wastewater infrastructure in one section of the South Shore as a model to help promote growth in other areas and transportation as well. But we're just starting to look at the next initiative for us in our economic plan, and that is placemaking in the cultural economy. The housing helped drive the people, and we think the next big phase is how do we make our communities more attractive, interesting places to live. And that's not just geographic, that is, or physical features. It is looking at quality of life and cultural economy. That does a few things for us in our economic plan, part of which is directly trying to help some of the major business sectors in the South Shore. And we think the cultural economy is clearly one of those large sectors that we ought to be promoting more. And that will affect many people in the NPO group. We're not quite sure where this is going to go. The plan for this, because it is a very large topic and can go in many directions, is we are beginning to have some small focus group discussions to try to get our own arms around how this will work. And then, like our housing initiative, probably pull together a group of anywhere from 10 to 20 subject matter experts to spend 9 months or a year kind of developing an agenda around how these topics tie into the Chamber's work, the 2030 plan, and how the Chamber can help drive implementation for the next 3 or 4 years after we adopt a priority. So we're looking forward to the recovery. It is going to be more challenging, I think, than the downside of the recovery in 21, because there's going to be more to do and more in front of us, and probably a tighter infrastructure to try to take advantage of those growth opportunities. So it'll be a hustle, but probably more exciting and a lot more positive than what we all went through in 21. So we continue to believe the nonprofits are a critical part of our economy, and appreciate the group staying together and letting us know how we can help. I'm
Great.
done.
Thank you so much, Peter. We appreciate you making the time to spend with us today and to give us some more insight on sort of where things are going and where things are headed. And, you know, this group wants to continue to try and be a resource to the business community as well, and how we can continue to partner with everyone. So thank you. So it looks like we have a good amount of time for our discussion. Julie is going to post these questions for you in the chat, but some of the things that we're hoping to address are, what did you do differently in 2020 to continue operating during the pandemic? That could be changes to operations, staffing, programming, fundraising, etc. And, you know, what lessons have you learned from that? And do you see yourself changing again in 2021? Or do you feel like there are some changes that you'll continue in the year and years to come because they ended up being really positive for your organization? And then sort of what I alluded to earlier, another topic or question we'd like to get to is, what are some of the challenges stemming from the impact that you would like instant feedback on? Or what are some best practices or things that this group can be helpful with as we kind of plot out our programming and education and networking for the next year? So that was a lot that I just said, which is why Julie's gonna put it in the chat. So maybe, you know, take a minute to read that, but then if anyone would want to kick us off and get us started, that would be wonderful.
I guess I'll go. So here at Plan Lifetime Assistance Network of Mass and Rhode Island, we're a special needs trust, and we have about 775 beneficiaries in our trust. 70% of our beneficiaries are over the age of 65. So sadly, and living in long-term care facilities, and we have social workers on staff. So sort of the bad news is that we lost a lot of people to COVID. We had about 150 beneficiaries pass away in the last 6 months, and it was really tragic and really hard on the staff because they develop, personal relationships with these folks, and we're helping to, improve their quality of life through the trust. And so that was very unfortunate. And just from a business perspective, we aren't replacing those beneficiaries as quickly as we sadly lost them. Really tough on the families as well. But I think, long-term care facilities have been inordinately hit by COVID. So that was just a circumstance we didn't anticipate. And it really has affected the way we approach things. And also I think recruitment has been a little bit difficult. I'm recruiting for 2 roles, and someone asked me yesterday, are you going to require that I get a COVID shot? And I thought, well, I don't know. Can I require someone to, that's kind of a personal choice, but we're required to get them here because we actually are doing financial transactions every day. We're considered essential employees. So, and people are going out to, when they can go out again, it's been very, very difficult to get out to the nursing homes. They haven't let our social workers in because of COVID. So that's been very isolating for our beneficiaries as well, because our social workers might be the only visit they get in the course of a day. So, we all have to get COVID shots, and I'm okay with it personally. I'm looking forward to getting my shot. I can't get in right now, but we are all going to get the shot. So there's all kinds of questions around vaccine. And so I just think recruitment's been a challenge. It's been very isolating for our beneficiaries, and I think that's taken a toll on their mental health, as well as frustrations on our staff's end about not being able to see and communicate. These folks are older, and they don't necessarily have technology to talk by Zoom. So it's really been just by phone. And but I think we're coming. I feel like we're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. So that's kind of where we're at.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that, Lucille. I mean, that's certainly a challenge that is hard to come up with one greater than what you described in terms of what your organization went through in terms of that sort of personal loss in 2020. And it's really hard to hear that, though it is great to hear that you are still seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think some of the, operational things that you touched upon in terms of recruitment, technology, and requirements around vaccination would have be the same things that many of us are thinking about and challenges that we're all facing too. I know in the disability side of things, the technology is also tough. Our population doesn't always do as well with things like Zoom, and how do you kind of combat some of that isolation? So definitely some really common themes that I see coming from there, and hopefully that's something we can kind of all help each other with as we move forward. Anyone else wanting to have some reflections? Paul, sure.
Hey everyone. Paul Grand-Pré, I'm the Vice President for Institutional Advancement at Massasoit. 2020 was certainly a difficult year. As you might imagine, the big change we implemented was pivoting to remote learning for all of our students initially, and then we were able to do some more in-person training especially for our allied health programs, EMT, paramedic, nursing, which those students are all doing their field work, diesel technology, veterinary technology, which are really hands-on lab courses. So about 5% of our courses are being offered in person with, social distancing implemented. So if you think about an EMT training session, normally there might be 6 people piled into the back of a large ambulance. Now it's one-on-one, so it's just a matter of scheduling more of those sessions. Lessons learned, the big one really is the economic chasm in our country and certainly in our region. It shined a glaring light on the divisions, and that there are so many people that don't have access to either Wi-Fi service or did not have access to laptops to participate in digital learning. When the campus first closed down, we purchased a whole bunch of hotspots on campus, and students were sitting in their cars around campus on their smartphones, participating in Zoom sessions. So through the CARES Act, we were able to purchase a number of laptops and provide financial assistance for students to participate remotely. And then thank goodness, through a private foundation, a very large grant to help purchase laptops for students who don't qualify for federal aid through the CARES Act. So that's definitely the biggest learning for us. Our enrollment has really been hurt. Typically in an economic downturn, a community college enrollment jumps because people are willing to invest in their education and they're having difficulty finding work. In the fall, we were down about almost 20% in enrollment. This spring, we're down about 18% versus last year. So what that tells you, there are a couple of things. One is it just tells you people are really hurting economically. They can't even afford the cost of community college education. It also tells us that since we do have a very high percentage of our students who are parents and the kids are at home, in a lot of cases, at least part of the time, there's competition for either the single laptop in the house or the limited bandwidth in the house. So people the parents can't invest in their own education. So how we're changing to address that is more financial aid, more emergency aid. We've been blessed by significant investment by a number of foundations and corporate partners to help us in this regard. So that's probably the biggest thing we've seen, and I think more and more people are aware of it throughout the country that this is a real dire need among students in community colleges. In terms of positives, some events that we would hold for student recognition. Last spring, we held our honors convocation that awards a number of scholarships. We held it virtually, and that actually helped a lot of students' families attend. And in some cases, if they were international students, the parents overseas were able to participate. The students got a little bit of their 15 seconds of fame on screen, and I think a lot of them really appreciated it. So that may be something we continue to do in the future. We got positive feedback from the students for that. So that's one change to the positive. I'd also say a positive has been the networking. I think the South Shore Chamber has been wonderful at sponsoring very successful networking events. I find them to be even more productive than in-person networking events. I think we can all say there are times you're at a cocktail party at a bar and you're talking one-on-one with a person. It seems like an interminable discussion. You can't wait to move to the next person. At least in a Zoom format, you have an opportunity with 5 or 6 other people to just enjoy a productive conversation. So I think networking in the virtual environment has been a real positive as well. And our territory is all of the South Shore, really, throughout Plymouth County, parts of Norfolk and Suffolk County. So I save on travel time in being able to visit with people. It's the one-on-one discussions with the high net worth individuals, major gift prospects that I miss. I mean, that's something you do over lunch or dinner and really cultivate a relationship. So I look forward to resuming those. But when the
weather was better, I went and barbecued at 2 major donors' houses.
Oh, good for you.
It was outside. We wore our masks, and I cooked them dinner at their barbecue. It went great.
Good for you. Yep. Takes some creativity. So those would be the lessons learned and some of the positives to come out of it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's great to hear that despite some of the challenges, you found some solutions in terms of getting some support from the funders. And that whole issue of access is so huge. And you're so right that 2020 just really brought that into the forefront of everything. But I also appreciate hearing some of the positives and some of the changes that you made that you'll, plan to carry forward in 2021 and beyond. So thank you. And Rick, that's too funny about the barbecue. I'll have to keep that in mind.
Hey, you gotta be creative.
Yeah,
Can I hop in real quick? Because I gotta hop off.
sure.
So we, on Tuesday afternoon, we had a volunteer test positive. And so that we lost 2 volunteer crews that are quarantining and have to test. And we have 3 staff members that are quarantined and have to test. So I'm running the food pantry this morning, so I'm kind of running around. But I really wanted to see everybody. So I wanted to make sure to hop on to say hi. And, some of the lessons that we've learned and the changes we've made are going to impact us for years to come. The way that we've changed our services, we're more efficient than we ever have been because we had to be, and we're constantly coming up with ways to improve our efficiency to accommodate the number of people that we're seeing in our food pantry. I do want to say thank you. There are people on here who are donors to Interfaith. So thank you to those of you who donate and support us. So I can mark this as donor cultivation right here. This Zoom call, this is a creative way. Challenges, I'll say, I don't know if I've had the opportunity to talk in this group. In the spring, one of our biggest challenges was the unrestricted funding we were getting, where we were getting some large grants that were like, oh, it's unrestricted, use it however you want. And it's like, well, that all goes, since it's not restricted, it wasn't carrying over into our next fiscal year. And at that point, we had no idea how fundraising would be. It was frustrating with that initial rollout, how nothing was being restricted for us. Normally you want that unrestricted funding. And for one time, I wanted them to restrict it so I could carry it over. We have our virtual events. We never expected it to do as well as it did, but it was really miraculous. We received one large donation, larger than ever we'd received, which made the difference for that virtual event. But also we wanted to make our virtual event interactive, make it a little bit different than, just kind of sitting there. And so we put a lot of work and a lot of effort into doing that. And it paid off from the results that we saw. We have had to hire more staff members, especially, we have an interpreter in here now. We're going to have to reallocate more resources to an interpreter because so much is being done over the phone. And we have so many undocumented individuals coming in that it's really impacted our services, which is great. We're serving that population, but the pandemic has changed how we do that. The thing that I've asked a few people about is the idea of virtual volunteering. We can't really find a way within our programs to do that because we're distributing food, we're providing mental health counseling. But, in a second, I'm going to hop off the call. I'd be interested to hear if anybody has any ideas. Email me afterwards about your virtual volunteering ideas and what you've done. We want to engage. We miss having our corporate sponsors here and all of those volunteers, but I also worry about our relationship with those corporate contacts, where so much in the past was fundraising because we were interacting with them on a regular basis and they were seeing our programs in action. Going into a year where they're not in our programs anymore, I worry about our relationship and funding going forward. So we want to engage those corporate volunteers. So I'm going to log off and get back to running the food pantry, but it was good to see everybody and happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Rick. Thank you for wearing many hats and still finding time to join us. We appreciate it. I will connect with you because we did find a way to do a virtual volunteering thing at Cushing. And I'll speak to it briefly. And then I know Jillian Fay wanted to speak. She raised her hand. I want to make sure we get her in there. But quickly at Cushing, we had Blue Cross Blue Shield volunteers pre-record them reading their favorite childhood book or a chapter from the book. And then we created a virtual library for our students and adults with disabilities to access, but it was also shareable outside of our community too. And we had like 3 maybe 2 Zoom meetings and then one big one with everyone that was going to participate. So they got an opportunity to meet me, hear about the mission, kind of connect with me, gave them their instructions. Then they went forward and recorded their books, and then we shared the final product with them, and we shared it on social media. So I think there was some good engagement that happened there and some good touch points. But I think one of the things that we have going for us is that we have a population that kind of supported what made sense there. You know, we can absolutely utilize a virtual library. So we'll have to think about how we could, you know, morph that model into something else. But just wanted to get back to you on that. So whatever you do, include Zoom meetings so you can engage with them. Jillian, you're still here, right? I don't see you on my Brady Bunch squares. You must be on my next screen.
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Thank you. Rick, I'm glad it's going well over there. I know I've volunteered there as well, so I know it's always a challenge. And Lucille, I'm sorry to hear of your losses. We also lost one of our monks to COVID, unfortunately, one of our elderly monks. So it certainly is a very sad time. But we actually have a bit of a success story, which I was keen to share because we normally do in-person events here at the Abbey at our conference centre. And we have a lecture series that's been going on over 20 years, and we have spiritual enrichment programs as well. And we moved to a virtual platform, which was a challenge because we've never done anything like that before. We've always done in-person events, as I said, fundraising and educational. But we've had a phenomenal response. We're reaching people all over the country, as well as Canada. And we even have one person that sometimes logs in from the UK. They must be up really late. But we have Zoom webinars, and some of the webinars are led by the monks, and some are led by external speakers. We have, as I said, the lecture series this year is about caring for the environment, so it's quite topical. And our lecture last week was with the National Geographic photographer, Carrie Walensky, and he was amazing. Took us on a tour of Australia. So it's been a challenge, as I say, to get it up off the ground, but we've been very pleasantly surprised with the response. Hundreds of people registering. We do get a drop off in attendance, as you would, you know, in an in-person event as well. We were kind of surprised in the beginning because of a virtual event. You think, well, where else are they going, you know, during the pandemic? But obviously something else comes along and they don't tune in. But so consequently, our donations went up as well because people are really appreciating these virtual programs. And we're doing online mass every day. And the monks have started doing drive-by communion when the weather's okay. So the Abbey, like whenever the pandemic started, you know, when everything closed down, including the church, our retreat houses, our conference centre, we were like, wow, I don't know if we're going to survive this year. But we actually had one of our best years ever. So going to a virtual platform was the best move that we made. We're lucky that we have a few younger monks that are technically savvy, and we're able to put the masses and everything online, as well as virtual meditation and stuff like that. I think one of the biggest challenges, though, going virtual, we do have an older population that would tend to come to the Abbey, and although they're delighted that they're able to still be involved, it's, you know, it's been a struggle bringing them along with us, and there's been a lot of hand holding, you know, to get them registered and get them on Zoom and stuff like that. So I'm still looking for best practices, ideas, though we're always trying to improve our online process, and we have some feedback that maybe our registration is too difficult. We're getting hundreds of registrations though, so I don't know if it's the product or if it's the user. But we're exploring different avenues, so if anybody has any feedback on what they're using for their, it's mainly the registration process. I would appreciate that. You don't have to give it to me now. If you want to email me, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian. That's incredible. That's been your best year to date. That's talk about taking something and turning it into an opportunity. So congratulations on that. I absolutely love that the monks are getting involved in virtual mass and drive-by communion. I think that is wonderful. I haven't heard of that drive-by communion before this morning, so that's amazing. And I think this is probably a great group for you to hear about some maybe event or online registration platforms. People welcome to email Jillian, but you can put it in the chat as well. I know at Cushing, we just switched over from Greater Giving to a platform called GiveSmart, which seems pretty well versed for virtual events. And much like yourself, we're hoping that attendance will be up for our big spring gala. And we're trying to think of ways to incentivize people who already signed up to then sign on and participate that night. So that's something that's on my mind as well. But thank you so much for sharing. We still have some more time for this part of the discussion. So I think I see a hand raised, Mary Warren.
Hi, everyone, and thank you. So at the Y, it has been a very interesting year, but as Jillian said, actually it was one of our best fundraising years. People were very generous, and between grants and our donors really stepping up to the plate, we did our best year ever in fundraising. The hard part for us is obviously closing our business for 3 months and laying off so many staff. I mean, that was the hardest part, is laying off the staff and not being able to bring people back. I mean, just, we opened in July, but we have, a less than a quarter of our membership, coming and actually participating. So that's been very difficult. I think, with all the stay at home, and we're a place that brings people together, it's very difficult. So that's been, the hardest part of the whole pandemic. But through it all, I think, is being creative and transitioning. And I definitely think the most important thing is technology has to be our friend. And we have to move forward and realize it's here to stay. I mean, we are not going backwards. I mean, so we have put a lot of work into, we're rolling out a virtual Y and virtual programs, and, going, and, even these Zoom meetings is, you are spending less time, cutting down on travel and, getting to more people and that. But as I really do miss getting together with the donors. I think that is a big loss, as the connections, as he said about the volunteering and getting people in and seeing our mission is different. But we've had been really creative and done, when the weather is great, we did a lot of reaching out to families and people. The seniors were isolated, people need food, there's a lot of people suffering. So we just became a different organization that we reached out. We did a lot of, our food pantry was feeding 1,000 people a week. We have long lines, but we also delivered food. We also brought in the restaurants. We tried to say, okay, how can we help our community? So we had donors pay for meals. Then the restaurants, we paid the restaurants and fed the food. So we helped not only the people that needed the food, but also the restaurants that were suffering, that really help us at our taste. Our taste was very successful this year, and that made me nervous as being a virtual event. I'm not a virtual person and wanted to do it. But again, we stepped up, it was creative, and we made it interactive, that we actually delivered a meal, so it was a sampling from all the restaurants, and engaged our restaurants and actually brought them a meal. So when they were on the Zoom meeting, we were all tasting all the restaurants. And then we had chef competition. So it was fun. It was great. I was hoping it was going to be the one and only, but I'm also preparing for this year for still virtual because I think it's going to stay for a while. So we have to embrace it. And how can we embrace it? So technology is, I think, a big thing. We've spent a lot of time on embracing technology and improving it. You talk about registration and that in our systems, having correct information for people, emails and that, but also how do we reach out to our seniors that don't have technology? I mean, we spent 2 months calling every single one of our seniors just to touch base and that. So it is, how can you connect differently to people? So I think the biggest thing is the isolation and the multiple tasking is all the families and the parents that are trying to teach as well as work has been difficult in this big adjustments. So it's how can we help people and what we're doing. So we're just really, transitioning into who we are and what we can do. Obviously, our doors are open. We have seen since January an uptick in membership starting to come in. We're safe. I mean, we're clean, safe, and because we're very fortunate to have big facilities, there's less, than going to the grocery store. It's safer. People are in masks. It's safe. It's clean. And we just need to get the message out there that they can come and exercise. And it's interesting because most of our elderly have come back. And because doctors have told them it's worse sitting home on the couch alone, not being active, it's better to be active and come in. So it's been, the seniors as well as the disability, people with disabilities, because we have equipment for that, who have come back. And then we have a lot of young families now coming back to do swimming lessons and get back into the swing of everything. So we're looking forward to definitely everyone getting vaccinated and getting back to being in person and being able to help people. But I think the big learnings were definitely is being able to be flexible, and technology is huge.
Well, thank you, Mary, for sharing all that. I'm also so pleased to hear that it was such a great fundraising year and that there was a lot of creative ways to reach out to people. I think your point about technology also reminded me that in addition to just embracing it, we also have to fully understand it. So as we use it more, like what are some of the risks and how do we, make sure we stay on top of those to make sure everything's safe for everyone, protecting our data and our information. So thank you for raising that. I see that we had 2 people raise their hands. So in order, we'll do Samantha and then Jonathan, feel free to jump right in after Samantha so we can get you guys in there.
Thanks, Lori. Can you guys hear me? Well, probably because we're the only environmental group that I think is participating in this NPO yet. We'll get more, I hope. I thought it'd be worthwhile for me to just reflect with you all about our work. The environment became the place everybody went this year, which is great. And I think, like many of you, we saw a lot of people step up by the end of the year. That's when we saw it. We were biting our fingernails throughout the year, but by the end of the year, I think people felt stable enough to give, and our folks gave well, and we had a banner fundraising year. It was our 50th anniversary, so we weren't able to celebrate it in quite the same way we had hoped. But luckily, we had some things that were already on the table that were virtually enjoyable, I guess. One is a movie that we made about the organization, and we released it on YouTube and sent it around to all of our donors, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to use that moving forward. I, like you, I think the challenge is the virtual world and people maybe getting zoomed out. But we did have a serious, kind of line of waiting people wanting to go kids outside with us during the non-school year, during the summertime, because programs weren't available. So that kind of helped us in that we were able to help families to get their children outside and enjoying nature, and expose our organization to those families. So there was a lot of silver linings for us. I think the challenges are that there were so many more people outside that not that typically they might have gone someplace else, or, you know, and it can be overwhelming on the environment. So, you know, we saw at least a 20% uptick in boating on our waters this year. Not everybody being as respectful as they should be of that environment. And so sort of enforcement and trying to make people safe outside in crowds, that was a challenge. Our virtual events, I would not say they were as successful as we had hoped. They were not, they were good at engaging. We could engage a whole bunch of different people than maybe we normally would. It's hard to translate that into fundraising success because we didn't tie it very tightly. We didn't require people to pay to come to some event. So we had a campfire stories in place of our gala with Jeff Corwin this fall. And we got a lot of people coming, but not a lot of people giving at that moment. Whether or not that influenced later giving, I can't tie it to it, but we definitely saw an uptick in giving by the end of the year. And we just happened to launch successfully the year before the COVID started, a new website with a database of all of the conservation properties on the South Shore, which we also had a contest to get people outside that we had already started as of, it was our 50th anniversary contest to get outside. We started in January of 2020. And obviously that got a lot of traction this year. So that's a huge silver lining for us, is that people are much more aware of the environment, much more thinking about it. We did have a serious drought this summer. Climate change is really starting to impact our environment. We had a fish kill in a stream that was dry, that would never go dry normally. And so we're a little bit concerned about how climate change is obviously going to ramp up, and how we can serve our community to support saving water here on the South Shore, because that's a big issue. So that's just sort of my off the cuff reflections. We had a great year considering all of the things that are going on. But we miss people, I think, that's for sure. Right now, I think in February of 2021, we're all kind of done with sitting in our houses, probably with our children. Not that I don't love them, but anyways, that's just my thoughts. Thank you for letting me share them.
Sure, I guess I will jump in right now. So it was a very interesting year running a television studio, and everybody's talking about technology and the importance of it, and dealing with technology during that time span. So we, like many organizations, we closed in March. We opened back to members during the summer on a gradual basis. But in between that time period, it became, how do we reach our members? How do we continue to produce, to get content out there? So we had to really put our thinking caps on and think about different ways to get stuff going, because we're really fortunate working in a really nice facility is that we have access to really super high speed internet. We're able to get things done in a quicker manner, whereas we had to, everyone working from home, transition in a slower manner as well. So one of the things that we did a lot of like virtual trainings for members right off the bat, saying like, hey, even though you can't get into the facility, you can't take out equipment right now, here's some ways you can produce content, and here's ways you can get it to us. So we had to really kind of pivot and think on our feet really quickly, because we didn't want there to be a massive gap, because we felt we would lose content if that happened. One of the cool things that we were able to kind of try new things and experiment throughout this whole process. There was pieces of equipment, pieces of software that we were able to play with and say, hey, this will work for us and this will work for our members as well. So it helped us a lot. A couple things that we noticed too during this whole time period is that one of the things that's maybe happened over the past years is the change in the focus of the organization. Whereas for the first, I'd say 8-9 years, we were very member focused, members producing content, very member driven. Whereas over the past few years, we've become more of a content provider for the community, which is a good thing as well. That the town really leaned on us over the past year in regards to government meetings, special government initiatives, and information sources about COVID. Sports, for example, many of you have kids who participate in high school athletics. You really can't go to a high school sports game right now. So the athletic director leaning on saying, hey, in addition to the varsity games you guys cover, can you cover JV games? Can you cover freshman games? Can you do basically any game that's possible? Also, we've had a lot of the nonprofits that we work with, really, lean on us to help them more, because everyone's doing virtual events, or they can't do the things that they used to do. So coming to us and saying, hey, can you create a video that we can use in replace of everything else that we've done in the past previously. But the big thing that has made us feel good is that we're being seen as an essential part of the community. That people in this really difficult time are leaning on organizations like MCTV and saying, hey, you guys are essential to the community because you help us get information out there. You're connecting the community when we really all can't be in person. So yeah, so that's basically, it's been a really interesting year, and hopefully 2021's a little bit better.
Well, thank you, Jonathan and Samantha, for sharing. I think, Jonathan, your point about nonprofits like needing your support, or businesses, I think one of the things that we've all wanted for a little while is more guidance on how to tell our stories, and to be able to do that in a virtual environment is so key right now. So it's wonderful to have you as a resource, and it's also something that Julie and I and the steering committee are trying to actively work on in terms of more resources for this coming year. And Samantha, just to touch on one thing you had mentioned about, you had these events, people didn't necessarily have to give, but then you saw a giving increase. Almost wonder if that would make for a good start to a donor survey for you in this coming year. I mean, not to add more work and another thing, but when we did a donor survey back at Cushing a couple years ago, I was actually quite surprised at the participation and some of the gems of information that I got that I was unable to follow up on. Even though it was just a handful, there was like 4 planned gifts that I became aware of and things like that. So it just might be something to think about, and I'm happy to connect with you on that if you'd like.
Thanks, Lori. If you have an example of your donor survey you want to share, send it along.
Yes, I can get that for you. No problem. Just help me remember. So we have about 5 minutes before we wanted to turn over to sort of the business portion of the meeting. So I think we have time if one more person wanted to share anything. Just feel free to raise your hand, chime in. I think I see Joanne raising her hand.
Yes. Hi, my name is Joanne Young. I'm from BCNC Quincy, Boston Chinatown Neighborhood Center in Quincy. We serve the Asian and new immigrant community, and through adult English classes, family services, and a youth leadership program. Just like all of you, in March, we had to close our sites, and I was really blown away by how adaptive our staff and our constituents were. We did modify all our programming to virtual. At first, we had to, assess need and make sure everybody had technology, and we were fortunate to get some funding from Comcast donated some laptops, so we were able to get them to some of our students. But we continue to, respond to the really critical challenges our community is facing, as many of you already mentioned, unemployment, the mental health stress, and for our community, the anti-Asian sentiment that added an extra level of stress and trauma to our constituents. So one of the positives that came out of this, or what has been coming out, is to see how committed and dedicated people have been to our mission and to our constituents, the outpouring of support, but also the collaboration with partners. Some of you on this call, as well as other, folks in Quincy, trying to really rally together to support our community. So we've really appreciated that. There's definitely lessons to be learned on how to use technology going forward. There's, not only in with our staff, we were talking about how we now use chat and video conferences with people who are at different sites, and, we probably can carry that forward. And then even with our constituents, we serve families who have a lot of barriers to even meeting with us at times. So now that they can join on a video call or do telehealth counseling instead, maybe options for them post-pandemic. You know, we definitely miss everybody desperately in person. There's nothing that replaces that, but there's definitely some technology things that we feel like can go forward. In terms of fundraising, I think some of you mentioned already. Similarly, we've done some virtual fundraisers that we had no idea if anybody would even come at all, and we were surprised to see response. I wouldn't say, I'm so glad to hear some folks saying it's been a banner year. That's awesome. It wasn't necessarily a banner year for us. We're just happy that we were able to recoup some funds, but it did allow us to invite people to events that typically they wouldn't have come out for. Like they wouldn't have come out to Quincy or Boston to an event. Just, you know, coming into town is like another thing. So like for them to be able to engage with us online was actually, you know, we were able to engage with people from all over. So that's something, but it's been challenging to meet new people, new donors, new prospects. So I think that's really one of the biggest challenges we've had. You know, folks, even our board who is like, I want to introduce somebody, but what can I show them? I can't, you know, there's not much to meet, you know, or to see the program in action and meet participants is so different. So, I mean, you can't really do that over Zoom as effectively. So that's been something that we've had a hard time with. But yeah, it's really encouraging to hear everything that's been going on with you all, the challenges as well as the ways that you've been responding. So thank you so much for this time.
Well, thank you, Joanne, and thanks so much for joining us today. And I think you bring up a really great point about new prospects and new donors. You know, we're all crossing our fingers that the people that already know us are going to participate and give and share our stories. Never mind trying to crack those new people. So it's a really great point, and I think something this group can kind of think through some more. And on that note, I will turn it over to my trusty colleague, Julie, for the next piece here. I believe she's going to share her screen. Is that next?
Yes, for the vote on the slate of officers. So let's see. Okay. Can you all see that? Okay. So do you want to lead that, Lori?
Sure. So hopefully you all feel like I did a good job leading the meeting because we're about to vote on the slate for the coming year. So take a moment. This is the steering committee. This is the group of folks that will meet and plan out the rest of the programming for the year and kind of guide us forward. We have Barbara Wallstrom from Friends of South Shore Help coming on as clerk, and then Christine Buckley from the Brain Aneurysm Foundation as vice chair. So I'll give you a moment to read it, and if someone could make a motion to approve, that would be wonderful.
This is Sue Chandler. I will make a motion to approve the nominations. Looks fabulous. Thank you all for taking on this additional work.
And seconded.
Thank you. Thank you, Herb and Sue. That's what I was looking for. Sorry, my dog is also barking in the background.
Voting.
She's voting, yes.
She's voting. She's excited too about the slate.
Okay. Okay, and so all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Anyone opposed? I think the ayes have it. I think that will suffice for our virtual Zoom vote for today's approval of the slate. So thank you so much. Thank you, Julie. Gypsy approves.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to bring up a couple of other things for as other business. Most of you, I think, on this call are also part of the, are also members of the Facebook closed private group that we have for the NPO group. But I'm going to put this as I'm talking. I'm also going to try to get the link in here. So for those who have not joined the Facebook group and you'd like to, totally optional, but this is just a tool that I think we've had for about 2 years now. As a, again, it's private, you need to ask to join. So I monitor that to make sure that we have folks that are actual nonprofit professionals and are members of the South Shore Chamber, because this is a, another benefit of being a nonprofit member with us. So you just click on that link, ask to join, and then I will approve you sometime today. But I always emphasize to use this group as, like I said, real-time collaboration. So as you are having, questions about the virtual registration and anything with the donor database or fundraising, it's good to put that out there and then start a dialogue, and perhaps it's even taken offline. I think some of you here have had success using that. I will use it as a communication tool, so you know what we're up to as a chamber, but specifically also what's going on with the NPO group and programming. So I wanted to call that to your attention. And talking with Lori yesterday, we, as a chamber, we're a nonprofit ourselves, a not-for-profit. And so we rely, obviously, membership and also sponsor, funders with our partner program and our funders for our 2030 program. And I see Jill Donovan on the call, if you want to wait, Jill, that she's our director of development for the chamber and our South Shore Economic Development Corporation. But we also offer sponsorship opportunities and that ways to market at a lower cost. We also offer advertising opportunities. I wanted to highlight something that I think would be a great fit for any organization here. We hold our Coffee Connections, which is our signature morning networking opportunity where we get a roughly around this size of group. We're planning right now to do that every month. And we're offering any business or organization the opportunity to kind of own 1 month and give your kind of your commercial and a way to promote yourself and your mission, a need you might have. Maybe it's volunteers, maybe it's promoting an upcoming gala, what have you. It's yours to use to promote. And it's $300 for that 1 month sponsorship. So just want to call it to your attention. I will include information in the wrap-up email, the link to that information and what the additional benefits are for that. But it just kind of came up in Lori and I talking yesterday in preparation for this call that I think that's a really nice tool for marketing for you guys. I think that's all I had for other business. Anything that comes to mind, Lori? Or we
Nope,
can
I
turn
think
it
that
over to
was-
networking.
Yeah, I think that was everything. Gypsy's calmed down now, so that's good.
Okay, so we're just we got about 10 minutes. We thought we would do this I don't know, we didn't really have a plan to do this, but because we didn't think we'd get here, but this has been very efficient time-wise. So we can just open it up to folks who have not spoken yet. I know thanks to so many who were interactive with the forum, but if you want to just, kind of unmute yourself and introduce yourself, that would be great, just so others know kind of more personally who you are. Sue
Chandler, can you hear me? Am I muted? Okay.
No, I
sorry.
can hear you.
Sue Chandler, Executive Director of Dove Domestic Violence Ended, based in Quincy and serving Norfolk County. Hi, everyone.
Thanks, Sue. Who else wants to go? Michelle? You're on mute yet.
There we go. Hey, good morning, everybody. So Michelle Duggan. I just started this past December as the Director of Development at Manic Community Health Center. So really just getting started, super excited to be there. And, we make sure we've had an incredible role throughout the pandemic, really on the front lines in the South Shore and the Southeastern Massachusetts community, very busy. with COVID testing and care and now vaccination. So super exciting work, and I'm grateful to be part of this group. I look forward to being more involved.
I guess I'll say hello. Hi, my name is Paul Key. I'm Chief Development Officer over at My Brother's Keeper. This is my first meeting with the group, so great to be with you all. We had, despite all the challenges, we actually had a very positive year. We served 87% more people in 2020 than we did the year before. A big part of that was our amazing volunteer base. And in fact, we have one of our amazing volunteers here with us today, Amanda Gately. So again, I've heard great things about this group. I'm really looking forward to getting more involved and learning more from all of you.
Good morning or good afternoon at this point. My name is Ricky DeSisto. I'm the development manager at Cardinal Cushing Centers. I will hit 11 years at Cushing this coming April. I've been with the development department about 8 years now. And I would just, really quick, just say one of the successes we've sort of had at Cushing is kind of just our success in figuring out ways to think outside of the box and making our mission sort of kind of out a little more among, the thousands of others that are making, asks of foundations or donors, and also sort of thinking of ways to make our events be able to work in a pandemic. We're going virtual with our springtime gala now. We opted to just do a Cushing fund as opposed to a gala last year. And we actually sort of, almost as we hit our budgeted goal for that, which was great. And then finding ways to make our golf tournaments in the fall work. Going with tee times, and our one of them actually did about $30,000 more than it did the previous year. So just finding ways to make things work, and trying to find ways that, finding out how to make things work differently than they used to in the past, trying to find ways to make it new and unique, which is, sort of a silver lining from the pandemic, I guess. So really happy to be here. Thanks. Hope everyone has a great Friday and weekend.
Yep. My name is Desiree Mobed, and I'm the director of the Alden House Historic Site in Duxbury. Certainly an interesting year for the travel industry, especially those who are going to be celebrating the 400th, but we all got through it. Virtual certainly was the way to go. Also, just for a lot of South Shore people, museums that were open and places that had outdoor activities. It was a great way for people. They kept telling us that they needed somewhere to go. So it was, that was an opportunity that we recognized. We partnered with South Shore, the walking trails, and that was very helpful. But against all the very, very real economic needs and all the ways that you all serve your constituents, it's harder, I would say, for, the museum field and a little bit to, make some of those dollars and make our funding goals this year. So, we keep thinking and working. This group's been great, some great ideas for us, but for the travel industry, although we're looking to better days, we know buses are coming eventually back, but it's difficult, and so we're trying to be creative, but thank you.
Andrea, do you want to jump in and say hello?
Sure. Hi, my name is Andrea Cook. I'm the Assistant Vice President of Communications at Work Inc. We are headquartered in Dorchester. We do services as far north as Methuen, as far south as Plymouth, over to Springfield, down to New Bedford, and in Rhode Island. As all of you have said, 2020 was an extremely challenging year, especially in the disability community, trying to navigate and get through kind of all of the craziness with the pandemic, but certainly we were able to pivot in I think one of the things that it pushed us to do is, the Department of DDS has been really pushing for siteless community-based day supports. And well, when individuals can't come to the site, we have to bring them out and into the community. So it kind of pushed us to and forced us to really move that quote unquote sightless model quicker than we would have, I think, if we didn't have the pandemic. You know, I think one of the cool things that we were able to do, and we partnered with NeighborWorks, Serenity's on the call. We opened our first completely deaf-friendly home, built from the ground up, all the bells and whistles that the individuals need until you know, they move on. So that was an exciting project, and we launched an open house in October outside on the South Shore. We are opening another 2 more group homes for individuals with disabilities starting 22. We are opening one down in Plymouth, and our newest one will be in Hampton. So despite, you know, a lot of things that, you know, the pandemic didn't allow us to do, like in-person events, it certainly allowed us to continue and expand some of our programming that is necessary. So I'm looking forward to 2021 is eventually getting back to in-person events. I love seeing everybody on a screen, but I really like seeing everybody in person. So yeah, it's great to be here. It's been a great conversation.
Who else wants to jump in? Hi, Jill.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jill Donovan. Julie introduced me earlier. And I just wanted to draw your attention. Something came across my desk this week for a regional pilot program from the state. It's a state grant. And it's a really interesting opportunity for a 501c3 and a municipality to collaborate on a project that with the goal of helping the region recover from the economic impact of COVID. It's a very quick turnaround. I think the deadline is February 10th. And it's like a real stimulus project in that it needs to be implemented by the end of June. So it's a real quick hit, but it could present interesting opportunities for some of your organizations. So I'm gonna have Julie attach the RFP to her follow-up email and just take a look. It could be interesting. One thing that stood out to me is that it says the maximum grant per application should not exceed $250,000. So I think there's a lot of money here if there's a good match. So take 5 minutes and look at it. I think it could be interesting for some of you.
I'll also put if I'm able, I should be able to put a link into the NPO Facebook group so you guys get it quickly. So thanks for bringing that forward, Jill. That's great.
And we could partner with you if you have a creative idea too. We could, you know, they're looking for, if you're a 501c3 presenting this grant, they're looking for two municipalities to partner with you. And that could be as simple as a letter of recommendation saying that this is a good project for my community as well.
I think that's kind of a great note to kind of wrap things up on as we all think about ways in which we could, you know, creatively partner and sort of harness that resource. So thank you so much, Jill. Thank you so much, Julie, for everything today and all your leadership and keeping us organized and moving forward. And I think Peter had to pop off, but he knows I thank him as well. And I thank all of you for all of your participation and sharing. And looking forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you all. Thank you, Lori. Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.